Hi students, just going to complete the material of the overview of the Industrial Revolution that I'm giving you here. And I laid the groundwork to talk about the Industrial Revolution last time by talking about the Agricultural Revolution. How you have new technologies that are making production more efficient. You have a growing population that's increasing the supply of labor at the same time as these efficient technologies are reducing the demand for labor. And case in point, very important case in point, is the textile industry. Really important part of the British and Dutch economies, which is where the Industrial Revolution is taking off, and also the Agricultural Revolution is taking off. Up until the Industrial Revolution, the manufacture of wool was based on what was called the putting out system. A lot of this livestock farming was farming sheep for their wool. Once the sheep had been sheared, the wool would be sent to local houses where members of society, often women and children, would spin this wool and make it into thread that then would be woven into fabric. And what we find during the period leading up to the Industrial Revolution is that, again, new technologies, the spinning jenny and the flying shuttle, are making these systems more obsolete. That a lot of the work that previously was done by, let's say, 4 or 5 spinners can now be done by 1 through this increased technology. So once again, technological growth and invention that is changing or reducing the need for labor in this society. And so these are the foundations for the Industrial Revolution. It's helpful, I think, also to talk about the ideological foundations of the Industrial Revolution. And we find the roots of this in the scientific achievement that we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago in this class. That we talked about in terms of astronomy, but also in terms of medicine, in terms of mathematics and chemicals, and the confidence in science that is emerging during this period. And we saw some of the effects of this with the Enlightenment. Can we apply scientific principles to society in order to make it as efficient and predictable and high achieving as we're seeing other scientific fields? And now we're also going to see that now applied to nature with industrialization. Can we take a mechanized approach to nature and exploit nature, and that's I think that's a fair use of that term, exploit nature to improve the condition of human beings? And so this confidence in science is a lot of what's behind the Industrial Revolution, pushing to see what human beings can achieve. But there's also this sense of dominating and controlling nature that comes out of this confidence in science. That nature is something that human beings can understand, can fully understand, and can take advantage of. And this is a big part of the ideology behind the Industrial Revolution. Other important components to the Industrial Revolution. We have a decline in need for labor, we have a growth of food, we have a growth of population, and we also have the discovery of coal, the discovery that coal can burn for longer, can burn for hotter, is a cheaper fuel than wood, which had been the staple fuel up until this point, and the development of the steam engine. Development of the steam engine, for the first time, we have energy that's not totally natural. Up until this point, energy had been produced by wind, had been produced by water, but now we have a human creation that can produce the type of energy that can run machines and can be built anywhere. And so the steam engine is the other component that's necessary to create the factory system that we associate with the Industrial Revolution. And the factory system is going to bring all these components together. Firstly, a component that we haven't talked about very much so far, the increasingly connected global world, and in particular the system of colonies that European nations had established. These colonies provide raw material for the Industrial Revolution, but they also provide the wealth. Many merchants, business people get very wealthy as a result of overseas colonies and trade with overseas colonies. And this in turn encourages a banking system that will lend money to these merchants on the understanding that they're going to get it back again, but they're going to get it back with interest. This is the beginnings of what's called capitalism. This banking system, these wealthy merchants businessmen, not a whole lot of business women at this time, are going to be able to take advantage of cheap capital to build these factories. They're going to be able to take out loans at very affordable rates of credit in order to change this way in which work is done in Western society. So capital, that's cheap capital, that's a result of an increasingly connected, globalized world. Energy, that's provided by a steam engine. Technology, these new means of producing textiles, but also other products as well. And then a cheap labor force. We'll talk more about the labor force in the next video. But these things all come together to create the factory system. Large buildings that can be produced through the products that steam engines are able to provide. These products contain steam engines that in turn fuel technological innovations like the spinning jenny and the flying shuttle, and make it possible to produce textiles, because I'm focusing on that because that's the industry where this begins, enables them to produce textiles at far greater quantities and far more cheaply than ever before. And this is the center of the Industrial Revolution. More things are being produced more cheaply and more quickly than ever before. And we see this take off in particular in England. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video, but why does this happen in England? Why is it that the Industrial Revolution takes off in England and then takes off in Europe? And as I alluded to before, really the source of, or the reason why it happens in England and in Europe before it happens anywhere else, is this focus on science that we see coming out of this period of scientific achievement, we might call the scientific revolution, that we looked at earlier in the course. This focus on science, this focus on technology, that you can, if you want, you can trace it all the way back to the medieval university, means that there's this interest in developing a mechanized society that we don't see elsewhere. People try and develop a factory system in the Ottoman Empire, and it just doesn't work. There isn't the interest in science and technology. There isn't the knowledge of science and technology necessary to make it work. So focus on science and this Enlightenment view of understanding and dominating nature. England as a smaller nation requires less infrastructure. And England is also, if you remember, this is connecting other parts of the class together, if you remember, England was at the beginning of kind of a fight against absolutism. Remember, they got rid of James II, replaced him with William and Mary. There's this focus on Parliament, and they extend this social and political focus on the freedom of individuals to economics. And so in England during this period, we see a unique focus on kind of laissez-faire economics that allows for the creation of large factories and large businesses during this period, and allows them to trade on a larger scale than the more local scale that you would find previously, or that was possible in France, where you had these different districts that were highly localized, and with tariffs in between meant it was very difficult to trade across different parts of France. In England, it's much easier for the whole of the country to be unified in these economic practices. And that's why the that's why the Industrial Revolution begins in England and in Europe and also in the United States. And from there will spread to the rest of the world. So that's the change in industry that's taking place, production of more things much more quickly. I'm going to talk about some of the social effects of this in the next video later on in the week. Thanks very much.